As we come to the end of Lent this week, we can see how the scriptures, how our gospel text every day are leading us up to thinking about Sunday, thinking about Palm Sunday, Passion Sunday, thinking about the cross. Today we get this rather confusing story where Jesus is in conflict again with some of the leaders of the people, with what the Gospel of John calls the Judeans or the Jews, which is not particularly helpful in Christian history given that Jesus, his mother, his disciples were all also Jewish themselves. But as he comes into conflict with these Judean leaders, we get more and more of a sense of a choice to be made, more and more of a sense of a conflict that's coming to its conclusion. And when Jesus talks today, he talks about how when you lift up the Son of Man, then you will realize that I am. And that lifting up of Christ, that lifting up, that ironic lifting up, being enthroned on the cross, is what we're beginning to get ready to celebrate next week. We pair that today with this other fascinating, famous reading from the book of Numbers, talking about the Exodus story where Moses lifts up a bronze serpent on a pole to help cure people who have been bitten by serpents. And obviously the early leaders of the church, the early thinkers of the church found this a fascinating parallel of lifting up of the serpent on a pole, lifting up of Christ on the cross, of the Son of Man on the cross, about the irony, the paradox here of lifting up a symbol of death, a symbol of sin, and making it instead a symbol of life and a symbol of holiness. And so we might ask, as we get ready for Palm Sunday, as we get ready to celebrate Easter, where are the places where the crosses of our life, the serpents of our life, where are the places where they are in our life and are becoming paradoxically a pathway to God? Now we have to be careful here because there's a long history of thinking about suffering as good in itself and of telling people who are already suffering to be grateful for their suffering. And I want to be very careful not to go that direction. Some of our crosses are not of our own making. Some of our crosses are placed on our shoulders, crosses that come from our past, crosses that come from physical illness, from mental illness, from other people's sin impinging upon us. But some of our crosses, some of our serpents come from our own sin, from our own actions. It might be the combination of habits we've inherited with the goals that we have not quite meeting where we want to be. It might be the crosses that we take up every day, and maybe this Lent has been a time to realize how we don't have new sins, we have a lot of the same sin. The old saying is that a saint isn't someone who never fails, a saint is someone who keeps getting up. And maybe this Lent has been a time for us to pay attention to where are the crosses in our life? Where are the self-imposed sins and crosses that have become part of our habits? We might be doing just fine in some areas of our lives, and we might have places that are still need God's healing, still need God's baptism, still need God's patience with us. One of the big, I think, dramatic visions, if we take this image of the cross, the image of Christ being lifted up, and the image of the serpent, is one of the deep truths of our spiritual life that we all want a shortcut. We all want to get around the place where we're hurt, around the place where our bad habits continually lead us to fall. And the message of the cross, the message of the serpent, the message of the gospel is that the way of the cross, the way to God, is by paying attention to those places where we most need God's healing. That by looking towards Christ, by looking towards the place where we are most in need of healing, is exactly where we're most likely to find God. We all want some way to go through and sort of magically suddenly become better people without having to struggle with our crosses. I do, at least. And yet, the message I think we get from our scriptures today is that when we lift up our sin, when we lift up our crosses and make them open to God's grace, then we have the chance of those becoming part of our story of redemption, our story of conversion. It's not that we get rid of our sins and then suddenly forget about them, but instead that the very fact that God is healing us from them is where we might find God most present in our lives. So as we get ready for Palm Sunday, as we get ready for the Passion Week, as we get ready for Good Friday, we might start thinking about where are the crosses in our lives that we're going to still keep carrying and asking God to help us carry. The cross isn't going to carry itself, but the good news we get today is we have a God who has entered into our lives to be with us as we carry those crosses, and who has gone the way before us carrying one himself.